The crown sits between glory and the guillotine. For centuries, royal women lived inside palaces whose walls protected and sometimes betrayed them. Some were toppled by rebellions and tribunals. Others were ripped from beds of silk and dragged into the street. Tonight, we walk those execution paths, from private scaffold to mob-mangled alley, from the clean sword of a hired French cutter to the botched axe of a trembling executioner. These are 10 royal women whose necks met steel and whose deaths became the dark mirror of their age. 10. Princess Marie Thérèse Louise of Savoy, Princess de Lamballe. Her end is the stuff of nightmares. The Princess de Lamballe, an Italian-born aristocrat and the closest confidant and head of Queen Marie Antoinette's household, was seized in the September massacres of 1792. During the Parisian frenzy, she was dragged through the streets, beaten, and, by numerous contemporary accounts, murdered and mutilated by a mob. Her head was reportedly cut from her body and placed on a pike, paraded before the very queen she served. This was not a legal execution, but a savage, humiliating public spectacle meant to terrorize and desecrate the monarchy. 9. Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. At 67, Margaret Pole carried Plantagenet blood and a dangerous pedigree. Henry VIII, fearing Plantagenet claimants, had her arrested in 1539, and after months in the Tower, condemned in 1541. Her execution was meant to be a private one at Tower Green, but it proved brutal and chaotic. Unlike the famed professional execution of some nobles, the axeman botched the blow. Contemporaries and later chroniclers allege the executioner hacked repeatedly, injuring her shoulders and failing to sever the head cleanly, turning a legal death into a grotesque butchery. For a woman of royal blood, this was both personal revenge and terrifying public theater, a reminder that lineage and age offered no guarantee of mercy. 8. Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary Stuart spent 19 years in English captivity before her judgment. A deposed queen and focal point for Catholic resistance, Mary was implicated in the Babington Plot, a conspiracy that aimed to remove Elizabeth I. In 1587, she was tried, condemned, and taken to Fotheringhay Castle. Her execution was executed as a formal state sentence, but eyewitness descriptions and later historiography highlight the drama. Forced to walk into a cold hall, to speak to the crowd, and then to the block, where the axe reportedly struck multiple times. Whether a martyr or a traitor, Mary's death was the legal decapitation of an anointed monarch, and it echoed across Catholic courts, changing dynastic calculations for generations. 7. Lady Jane Grey, the 9-Day Queen. A child caught in palace plots, Jane Grey was elevated and then abandoned. Thrust onto England's throne in 1553 as a pawn of ambitious nobles, she was deposed within days and later condemned for treason by Mary Antoinette's government. On the 12th of February 1554, aged about 16 or 17, Jane was led to the block at the Tower of London. Accounts emphasize her youth and composure. Blindfolded, she forgave those involved, knelt, and was beheaded with a single axe blow, though some sources claim the executioner's hand was shaky. Her death reads like tragedy, innocence and political collision, rather than a spectacle of vindictive mutilation. 6. Anne Boleyn. Anne's fall is almost archetypal Tudor theater. From queen consort to condemned in the space of a year, she was accused of adultery, incest, and treason, charges historians largely view as politically contrived. On the 19th of May, 1536, Anne was taken to the Tower Green and executed. Henry VIII had a skilled French swordsman brought in for her. The cut, according to sources, was clean, done with a sword rather than the axe used for most English nobility. Brutal in consequence, but, by some accounts, merciful in its swiftness, Anne's death became a mythic blade that shaped Tudor memory, and left a daughter, Elizabeth, to transform that legacy. If the past hooked you, there's more. Every crown hides a story, every scaffold a secret. Hit subscribe so we can keep peeling back royal curtains together. Short, deep dives every week, cinematic, intense, and ruthless with facts. Join Creece Stories. Catherine Howard. Barely a teenager and the fifth wife of Henry VIII, Catherine Howard's brief life as queen ended in dreadful humiliation. Accused of past and present sexual impropriety by a court eager to convict, she was attainted without the protections of a full, fair trial. On the 13th of February 1542, Catherine was executed on Tower Green. Accounts describe her as terrified yet repentant at the scaffold. Her death was swift, but the lead-up, betrayal, and political manipulation inside the royal bedchamber made the execution feel grotesque, the private scandal of a young woman weaponized and finalized by the state. 4. Jane Boleyn, Viscountess Rochford. Jane Parker, Lady Rochford, was wrapped in the Tudor web. Once sister-in-law to Anne Boleyn and later attendant at court, she bore witness and allegedly participated in the intrigues that toppled queens. In 1542, she was condemned alongside Catherine Howard and led to the same scaffold. Contemporary sources say she spoke and prayed before the blade took her. She was beheaded and buried at St. Peter ad Vincula in the Tower. Her story is grim because it's about complicity and the terrible cycle of palace revenge. Aid one fall and your turn may come next. 3. Madame du Barry, Jeanne Bécu, Comtesse du Barry. Not a queen, but a symbol of the ancient regime, Madame du Barry rose from obscurity to become Louis XV's last official mistress, and later a regent. Arrested during the Reign of Terror on charges of treason and evading émigrés, she was condemned and guillotined on the 8th of December 1793. Eyewitness descriptions show terror on her face. She begged for mercy on the way to the scaffold. Her death was emblematic. The revolution's blade did not spare women of influence, and the public execution of a former court favorite fed the revolution's appetite for dramatic, punitive spectacle. Elizabeth of France, Madame Elizabeth. The king's sister, known for piety and steadfastness, Elizabeth stayed with the royal family as the revolution tightened around them. Arrested, tried, and sentenced during the Terror, she was guillotined on the 10th of May, 1794. Contemporary accounts emphasize her calm courage at the scaffold. Witnesses recall that the crowd showed unusual restraint. Robespierre reportedly feared the public sympathy her death would ignite. Her execution is grim, less for mutilation than for the betrayal. A princess, unarmed, legally processed and led to a mass mechanized death machine that made spectacle of even the most decorous royal victims. 1. Marie Antoinette, the final number, the least brutal in this ranking. Marie Antoinette's fall is emblematic of revolution's justice, imperial majesty reduced to a docket and a date. The queen was tried by the Revolutionary Tribunal, convicted of multiple political crimes, and on the 16th of October, 1793, was guillotined at the Place de la Révolution. It was public, humiliating, and final. But by contemporary standards, the guillotine was fast and comparatively certain. What made it horrendous was the cumulative humiliation. Starvation, solitary confinement, mock trials, and the spectacle of a queen led, shackled, to a mechanical blade in front of tens of thousands. Her death closed an age and remade Europe's language of what it meant to dispose of royal blood. Power is brilliant and fragile. Each of these women, queen or crowned companion, met a different blade: riot, botch, executioner's art, tribunal, or mob. Their deaths shaped nations and haunted dynasties. They teach us the human cost when politics carves itself into flesh.